As per Asabiya theory by Ibn Khaldun, in dynastic politics of power, uh, third or maximum fourth generation loses the power completely. But Mughals successfully kept power to themselves for up to six generations, Babur to Aurangzeb. How? What did they do differently? So I haven't read the Asabiya theory by Ibn Khaldun or the Muqaddimah that he published. So I don't know exactly what he said, but let's say he stated that in dynastic politics, three or four generations you have power and then they lose power. Well, if you look at Indian history, that doesn't hold true at all. The Mauryan Empire, the Mauryan dynasty had way more than four generations who stayed in power, maybe most likely more than 10. If you look at the Kushan Empire, the Kushan dynasty, you had like 15 or so rulers who were in power in the same dynasty. The same goes for the Guptas. You had Shri Gupta, Ghatotkacha, then Chandragupta the first, Kumaragupta, Skandagupta. I'm sure I got the sequence not quite right, but you had a large number of rulers. They were not all emperors of all India, but they were in power, right? So the dynasty lasted a significant amount of time. You had lots of iterations, generations of the dynasty, which were in political power. And the same goes for the Cholas. The Chola dynasty was in power for 1500 years approximately. They were not always emperors. At some points in time, they were small chieftains at a district level or so, but they stayed in power in some way or the other. And it's one of the longest ruling dynasties in the whole world. They weren't emperors of India and Southeast Asia for 1500 years. That was a small phase in the 10th and 11th centuries. But this dynasty would have had hundreds of generations, right? So these theories don't always hold true. This is not a scientific theory. It's more like a conjecture that Ibn Khaldun came up with. And he came up with this conjecture most likely in the context of the Islamic world. Maybe I'm not sure what time period it was and all, but there is a different context compared to India. Even if you look at the Japanese, their current dynasty has lots of is many generations old. So that's how it goes, right? So it's not like a rule of thumb. It's not something like a law that's set in stone. It depends from place to place. In certain cultural contexts, you will have lots of generations in a dynasty. In certain cultural contexts, you may have maximum three or four generations. It all depends.